No, I think it would do you a disservice to basically stumble through it, and I'd probably be, yeah.
I get it, no problem.
But I'm stoked about watching Justice League. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm stoked.
We were just
about
talking about the hate is swelling
already. Come
Oh
on.
God, yeah.
Well,
If you go over
someone brought that up. It was not me.
If you go over to Scott, I'm not triggered. It's general discussion. If you go over to Scott Menzel's thread or whatever, there's a whole huge discussion he fired on, talking about the exact thing that I had mentioned last year about how two movies can have similar problems, yet someone rates one a 4 and one a 7.
Oh no!
And it's just the difference between a Marvel and a DC film.
That's horrible.
It's the fact that I still get this, and we've talked about this before. It's the fact people I don't think appreciate the fact that you can have a debate about superhero films out in theaters now. You can actually have a debate because there's so many out there. You have many to compare. You don't have Dolph Lundgren as the Punisher direct to video.
Yes.
Only.
Yes.
I should say. You don't have maybe one superhero film every year or two. Now you got 3 or 4 a year for crying out loud.
Yeah, but the ones that are coming up are exciting. They're phenomenal. These are the ones that I've been like, wow, I'm this is going to be interesting, and I just hope that I don't hype it up too much.
For me, the WoW one is going to be Black Panther.
Black Panther, yeah,
that's the WoW for me.
Mine is Captain Marvel. I'm such a
and Captain Marvel as well.
Yeah, a huge fan of the characters, so I'm hoping they do a good job.
No, hang on, Captain Marvel or Shazam?
Oh yeah,
yeah, Shazam would be interesting, but I'm a bigger fan of Ms. Marvel.
Okay, no, because that is the characters. I just wanted to be clear in my own head because they get mingled together, and there's been announcements for Shazam recently too.
That's correct, Rick. That's correct. But because of the problems that they had with Marvel, they pretty much DC just said, "Well, we're not going to try to fight this anymore. Our character's called Shazam."
Oh, they lost that fight, 30
long
years
time ago.
Yeah. No, because of stuff. It's the dumbest fight ever. Because
not the only dumbest fight ever, but
no, but it's high on the list is because it's like, DC's the one that put Captain Marvel out because Captain Marvel was outselling Superman.
Yeah.
It's one of probably the worst judgments in creative history. And then after they got the character, they ended up abandoning it a couple of times just to, after keeping and managed to lose the copyright to the name. And that's how Marvel got it.
Yeah.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear us?
Can we hear him?
We can't hear him yet.
Oh, no.
What the hell, Scott?
So close.
It's Minnesota. I blame Minnesota.
So close and yet so far.
Oh, no.
Boo.
Boo. Hiss, boo.
Oh,
Hiss, boom, ba.
He muted it. So he is hearing us.
I see that.
Now he can hear us.
He was here.
So we can answer him a series of yes/no questions, and then if he does a single ping only, that's yes. Double ping means no.
Well, he can text.
He can still group chat.
I want him to do it this way because it'll be more complicated. And then I'm going to drop out because
can we have Glenn play the role of Scott Davis tonight? He can just read everything that Scott says in the text chat. That might take some time, but no.
Oh man, his mic is giving problems.
I wish.
Nice.
Yes.
I wish I could donate my stuff to you here because I'm going to drop out, but
just transport your microphone to him. And
yeah, you can send a lot over fiber optics, but man,
not yet.
Yeah,
not yet.
3D print him a microphone stat.
Stat and 3D printing do not go together.
Oh, come on. It will be when it's called a replicator.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
there you go.
know that, Star Trek man.
Oh, yeah, I know that. But
Jazz-
right now, if you took a 3D printer and said stat, you'd be like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Do you guys do any rendering, like 3D renders?
I don't have that skill.
Okay.
Not
Well,
really,
the software I use is DAZ Studio 3D.
Okay.
And right now, because of the 3D printing and because of all these new licensing problems that they're coming up with, they changed their end user licensing agreement, and they're making everybody go through it. And it's interesting because essentially the things that you buy from their site to use for your own creations, you own the rights to that, except in certain areas, like if you try to use them in a video game and it slightly changes the look and feel. So by, like, you know how some video games allow you to take an image and then sort of manipulate it a little bit. Well, that finds out that that's a violation of their end user agreement, and so they made everybody change all that. Now you have to pay extra to get to be able to buy the rights, so that if you wanted to use it in your own video game or something like that, unless it's like an absolute still of it, then it's okay.
Damn you, Disney! Damn you!
Exactly.
What? Where'd that come from? Okay.
Oh, copyright laws and such. Damn you, Disney!
Oh, I
Yeah,
see what you're
Disney,
saying.
yes.
Okay. Roger that. Yes.
And then they also have a special change for 3D printing, because now apparently you can take your creations and and you can make money on it. And so, of course, once you start making money on stuff,
It becomes tricky. No.
Comes YouTube.
we want a piece of that. So, anyways, good luck, guys.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, I
See you
just
later.
didn't feel like I could do it justice.
No,
Justice.
We'll see you Monday.
Yeah,
No worries.
I'm so looking forward to that. I'm gonna be so stoked about watching.
Hey, we hear Scott.
Wait.
Holy shit!
See, I
Can
just
you
needed to
hear
drop
me?
off.
Can
Yes.
you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Now I feel glad that I actually spent money and bought a second headset. For some reason, the thing is, it was not. I could hear you guys just fine. I heard Mark cursing when I came on, and and everything like that. And then for some reason, it just was not working. As half the time, it would tell me it couldn't even find a microphone.
Oh.
So I don't know what's going on there. So I'm sorry, guys. This is good because I have. Let me just turn the lights out real quick, because I have about what would it be, like something like 34 years of Superman 3 hate to get out here today.
We'll see you later, Paul.
Oh, come
It was
on!
nice to hear from you, Paul.
I know. Don't hate too much.
We'll see you later, Paul.
Yeah, bye.
I was
Wait,
turning out
where's-
the light there.
Where's Paul going?
Paul. Oh, he didn't actually. He blanked on the episode, so he hadn't rewatched it recently, and he doesn't hop on because he didn't.
Lucky
Quite-
bastard.
Come on. Damn, dude. Wow.
Lucky Jesus.
Oh, this is gonna be spicy.
Yeah, I watched it. I thought this episode was actually last Wednesday.
No.
So
Oh,
Wednesday. So Wednesday is my day off. Is one of my days off. I work 4 days a week, 10-hour days. And so I got up on Wednesday morning and watched this, and I'm like, I didn't need to do that.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're on. We got audio for Scotty D. Let's roll on this motherfucker and talk about this film. So we're gonna get ready here. You guys ready? Glenn, you ready?
Yep.
Awesome. And seeing people think I got triggered last year. Well, I have a feeling we have many triggers for Scotty D tonight.
Oh my.
And welcome to another episode of the Spoiler Room. Thanks for coming down here into the Spoiler Room with us tonight. I got a great crew. Yes, it is the third week of the year. Plus, it's our super month here in the Spoiler Room. And also, I didn't plan it this way. It just happened this way. First week, we had the movie Super. Second week, we had the movie Blank Man. So this week, we are covering Superman. Oh, look at that, how that comes together like that. Only it's Superman 3. Got your hopes up. Third time's charm, third film in franchise, Superman 3, and I got a great crew for you tonight to talk about this film. First off, the BFD himself is back in the spoiler room, the one and only Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
Hello.
How are you doing tonight, sir?
Yeah.
That's good.
Superman 3. That's how I'm doing.
Soon people will be using Superman 3 to describe their feelings for the week. And next to the BFD, he is back with us, coming to us now from a new location, his own Fortress of Solitude. It is the man, Baby Spice himself. Those sweet, sweet pipes of Scotty D are back in the spoiler room. Hello, Scotty D.
Hello. Yes, this is my first podcast I'm doing from my new apartment in Minnesota. With my new setup, and it almost didn't happen because apparently I don't know how wires work. This is the first time, so we're gonna see how this works. Stressful week. Been having issues with the dog, getting her situated. She's taking it a little harder than I was expecting. So, but yeah, once everything gets settled, I'll be happy, and I'm sure that eventually I'll stop drinking.
So much?
So much.
So quite as much, just like it's like I'm sure I'll get to that level where it's like, oh, time to kill the pain, time to kill the anxiety. just to a level where it's like, yes, I can deal with this. Yes.
Wow, you really just didn't like Superman 3, did you? But we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, this movie has turned, this is the movie this is the movie that made Richard Pryor saying, I thought I hit bottom when I blew myself up.
Oh, we'll get to that, I'm sure. Hey,
Mark has now resorted to spoiling his own episode.
I have, yes. We've already spoiled part of this episode.
Show's over. No.
And those sweet pipes there as well. We got a trio of sweet pipes tonight. And that third charm man himself. He's back from the stage, the big theater scene in Milwaukee. It is our own Doctavius Stephen. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Tired, but everything is well. Greetings and salutations.
Glad to have you here. And yes, folks, tonight we are talking about the third in the franchise of the Superman franchise. It's the Superman film where he gets drunk, gets laid, and plays with himself in a junkyard. We're talking about Superman 3 from 1983, directed by Richard Lester. Sorry.
Plays with himself in a junkyard. That's not how I normally would describe that scene, but okay.
That's how I'm gonna describe that scene from here on out.
Somehow I'm not shocked.
It's like, suddenly, I don't know. I'm just gonna say when I play with myself in a junkyard, they don't make it into a summer blockbuster. So this was the pulse of America in 1983, apparently.
Yes, it is. So, did anyone at all want to try to describe the plot for this movie? Doc, would you like to? Or you want me to just read what's off of Ibn?
No, I think I might be able to accomplish this.
Just do it!
Richard Pryor is an unemployed man in Metropolis who turns out to be a random genius at computer programming, to the point where he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's very talented because his initial program is filled with print commands. He ends up stumbling upon an idea to grab all the little fractions that are left over when transactions take place financially, and suddenly is filled with thousands of dollars worth of money that he is not smart enough to keep under his hat. He puts them all into a shiny new car, where his boss finds out about it because Richard Pryor has not decided to be subtle. So he gets brought on to then work more specifically for head honcho, played by Robert Vaughn, and magically hacks a weather satellite that has some sort of weaponry on it so that he can start controlling the weather, because clearly everybody would believe that the U.S. would put up a watching Weather Satellite in the 80s that would actually have more capability than that. It does make sense. You will notice I have not mentioned Superman yet, but I was getting to that because eventually he manages to make his way back to his 15th high school reunion, setting this movie clearly in 1980 instead of 83 when it was released. And he ends up getting contaminated by the evils of cigarettes. No longer washes himself, so he starts looking like the Superman from Superman Returns in his costume. And eventually the pleas of a young boy bring him back to his sanity after he manages to fight himself in a junkyard and defeat the giant supercomputer that should have been named Brainiac but wasn't.
True that.
Man,
Cool. Yeah, that's good.
that's good. And also, when you put it like that, this film doesn't sound too great.
When you put it like that, it sounds a half hour too long, doesn't it?
At least.
You know, they only did two things to promote this movie. One was to say, like, hey, Richard Pryor's in it, and it's funny like that, but the other thing that they used to promote it was like he fights the supercomputer, and that was the big deal. I mean, I had a Superman book, like the kind that they used to give you in the book clubs, and it was like 64 pages, 128 pages, whatever, of these full color thing, and the big fold out was like, oh, Superman 3, and it was a lot of like, yeah, Ned O'Toole, okay, yeah, great. Computer shoots kryptonite, you know, and that's was the only thing where, at 8 years old, you're like, oh, this is gonna be good, and then it wasn't.
It could have been so much worse. So much worse based on what they've said.
Oh,
are we jumping the route now?
I would really love to know. I probably know half the stories, but I'd still love to know.
We'll get to that in a minute, Doc.
Sure. Jumping the route, sorry.
Because I want to get initial reactions as we always do. And since we're already getting a little flavor of Scotty D's and yours opinion, let's go to Glenn first. Glenn, Superman 3. After you get those wonderful Superman 1 and 2s, you get 3. And we try to be positive in the spoiler room, but it's going to be tough tonight, I think. How did you feel when you saw Superman 3?
Yeah. This was a hard one for me because I really liked the first two Supermans. This is when I was still kind of a Superman fan, which I'm not so much anymore. And I loved Richard Pryor. So I'm like, cool, Superman with Richard Pryor. This will be great. But no. This was, wow. Why not just have Superman fight some dude who gets really strong with the sun? Oh, wait, that was the next.
That's the next one.
Oh, yeah. Because they could do worse than this, and they do. But I didn't know that when I saw it. So yeah, it's so far down from the first two. And Christopher Reeves I can't buy him angry. I can't buy evil Superman played by Christopher Reeves. I can't buy angry Superman played by Christopher Reeves. He just doesn't do it well in this.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen him do angry in other stuff, but just in this, it just doesn't work for some reason. And then Richard Pryor and the whole, supercomputer thing. No. No. Oh, we're gonna trap him in a bubble and he's gonna suffocate, even though he can survive in space.
That ran across my mind when he took on the machine. He got sucked in the bubble. We're going to jump around tonight, folks. I hope you don't mind. We're jumping all over in this film. I was like, he can breathe in space. What is this whole?
What do they say? They say let him see him survive without any air. Every single Superman movie ends with him in space, grinning and waving at the camera like, I don't have to bring motherfuckers. So
Dude, I still want
He's
Superman to
fine.
say that now. Motherfuckers.
Jeez.
Oh, Doc, how about you in Superman 3?
I'm reasonably sure that I ended up watching this as a youth on one of the independent channels here in Milwaukee, either 18 or 24. And let me see, I was probably 11 or 12 at the time, I'm guessing. I don't remember having a whole lot of love for it. I remember it and I don't remember it at the same time. Because even reviewing it again now, I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember that vividly. I remember this vividly, and I don't remember hating it. I don't remember going, wow, that was the best thing ever either. It's not really a superhero movie in a lot of ways. It's more of a weird, slightly, occasionally dark comedy. So rewatching it tonight, it was, yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. And we'll try to get to all the things without making it too long because
Yes.
The movie was long too, especially for back then.
I will say I do not hate it, which is probably the highest compliment that it will receive tonight.
It was actually shorter than the first two, but it just felt longer.
That could be, yeah. That could be. So, Scotty D, I think the audience already got a little flavor of what you felt. How did you feel when you first watched this?
Well, I loved the first two, and so of course, first of all, sci-fi, anything for me, and also, guys, especially younger people in the audience. Again, we've said it before, but it might be hard to realize. We did not have a lot of superhero movies. If your superhero movies were Superman, that's it. That's all you had. You didn't have shit. and so Superman comes out. Superman 3. I'm like, yes, Superman 3. Can't believe it. Can't wait. I'm so excited. And I remember going to see it, and there are parts of it that I enjoyed. I remember when I was 8 years old, I liked the computer fight. I don't anymore, but I liked the computer fight back then. When you're 8 years old, the lasers and the stuff like that was kind of cool. I always liked the junkyard fight. I liked the chemical fire scene.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid thinking Richard Pryor was really funny in it, and because of course this is my first thing I was allowed to see with Richard Pryor in it, as far as a movie's concerned. And let's just say it, Richard Pryor is the most legendary stand-up comic of all time, in my opinion. I think he's incredible. I think he's an incredible talent. His movies are mostly crap. His movies, Chris Rock followed him. Amazing at stand-up. His film's terrible, And
would you say that movies were his kryptonite?
Oh no, I would never say that because
that's okay. I did it for you.
but I remember thinking, like, I liked this part. I liked Richard Pryor. But even back then, I remember thinking, this is not a very good movie. This is just not a very, very good movie. And I mean, this is coming from somebody who when he saw it at 12 years old, thought Superman 4 was awesome. So, I mean, clearly my standards weren't that high. I mean, but I really, my hatred wasn't quite Popeye levels. That was like, that was the first movie. Popeye was the first to give it. It's not like just kind of like a side swipe backhand compliment. When you're a kid and you go see the movies, and almost every movie you see in the theater, you're like, "That's the greatest thing. That's so cool." When you're really little, Popeye at 5 years old was the first movie I remember looking at my mom and saying, "Mom, that was not very good."
What?
Popeye sucks. Popeye sucks. Every few years I try to rewatch it and say, like, did I miss something? No, I didn't. It sucks. And that's
writing that down on Scott's
And
Nope.
that's almost
in Scott's
what
file.
and that's almost what I thought of it. There were parts of this that I enjoyed, though, and I hope we're going to get to them, especially the junkyard fight. But yeah, it was a sign of people who were doing a Superman movie that didn't want to do a Superman movie. They wanted to do a movie about Clark Kent going to his high school reunion and romancing his high school sweetheart and getting to know little Ricky and this bumbling guy who's really good at computers. And it was I have an astonishing amount of hatred for this movie. I think it's pointless. I think it diminishes the series. I think this thing is sexist as all get out. Absolute, like, to a really offensive degree. I hate Superman 3.
Wow. Well, I think we got the gist of how Scott feels about the film.
Yep.
For myself,
I'm
Again,
junkyard Kent at this point.
when I was young, when I first saw it, I remember the final act, the battle with the computer, and I remember him fighting himself. I remember basically the key scenes that many people here mention. I didn't remember the in-between stuff, and I haven't revisited it in a long time, so that's why I was glad it was on our list of movies to watch. So revisiting it again, I'm like, I don't remember half this, that the whole story with him in the reunion. Didn't remember that at all. Did not remember that. I remember the part where he had the dirty costume and the fight in the junkyard and the fight with the computer screen. That's what I remember as a kid. But I do remember that it was, out of the three at the time, my least favorite. And if I saw it on cable, depending on where it was in the movie, would determine on whether or not I'd watch the rest of it. So if we got to the Atari part with Superman on the Atari screen, then maybe I'd watch it. But yeah, this one for me as well. And watching it now with a little bit more of the critical hat for the show, which I do have a critical hat, folks. It is under my Terminator 2 hat and under my I really like Sucker Punch hat underneath my other hat of screw you, I like Batman versus Superman hat. And under that hat is my critical hat. And watching this, I'm like, there's a good movie in here. There's a good Superman movie in here. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we're never on those bits long enough to really enjoy this. Mm-hmm. Because it's like there's a couple different movies going on in here. Yeah. And looking at this, though, I'm like, oh my God, there's like 2 or 3 movies that I know of now that have ripped off certain plot points from this film for their own movie. I'm looking at you.
That's why I watched all Office Space. Yeah. 30 seconds before they started explaining it, I'm like, that's the plot of Superman 3. Like 30 seconds later, they go, isn't that the plot of Superman 3? I'm like, all right, you have my attention.
Yeah, I remember even in his review for Office Space, Ebert liked Office Space, and he mentioned that, and he said, now see, a lesser movie would have tried to pretend like they weren't ripping off Superman 3.
Yep.
But this movie is honest that they were ripping off Superman 3 because it was about people who wouldn't have any creativity beyond ripping off Superman
3. I can believe that.
So he dug that. I'm like, yeah, I buy that. That's good.
we get a Superman film opening without Superman for at least the first maybe 5 minutes of this or so.
And it's a very basic intro to Superman. It's a big slapstick thing. Oh, terrible.
Well, and the credits sequence, just this whole awkward opening, Doc, this whole sequence from when we finally get to see Kent to before that, where we get Richard Pryor's character, who is now not collecting unemployment, and the odd credits and the Rube Goldberg events that happen with stuffed penguins and Jimmy Olsen's wiener and sorry,
context phrasing.
I'm saying that on purpose with this one.
Understood. Yes.
What'd you think of this? I mean, it kind of tells you where this movie's going, doesn't it?
issue here, if you will, is that this is a Richard Lester film.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And to briefly reference a point that Mark has made before about movies in the 70s and the 80s is we didn't know how to do these things yet.
Mhm.
The concept of franchises and sequels were still kind of new. So here we are at a third Superman movie. This is the first one that Richard Lester has gotten to do from beginning to end. And Richard Lester is known primarily as a director of comedies. He's the man who worked with Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan with the Goons in the early 60s, late 50s, early 60s, which got him a gig directing Beatle movies that are primarily comedies. What's the first song we hear at the school reunion? We hear the Beatles version of Roll Over Beethoven. That's not unintentional. He basically walks through that entire sequence. It is filled with British comedy stars doing
Mhm.
shtick. You see Bob Todd right away getting paint on him. Most people know him as one of the actors from Benny Hill. He was in all sorts of other ones, including shows with Spike Milligan. Have I drawn a little bow there together already? So this is the issue as much, and that's why I referred to the movie as a comedy primarily, because Richard Lester liked having physical comedy in his movies. You know, again, this is somebody who's working with guys who are good at this. There's a lot of this in this film, and most of it is ill-timed and
Mhm.
ill-conceived, but they didn't know any better. It was worth a shot. So it's awkward, but a lot of
Yeah.
familiar faces for me.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out all those great people too, especially since I was like my thing. I knew that who they were, but I was kind of like more like, oh, that guy,
Yeah.
instead of
Bob Todd,
and you actually know that you
the
actually
guy,
did your homework.
John Bluthel's the guy at the Leaning Tower of Pisa. He also worked with Spike Milligan a lot.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
good stuff and as you say, like, yeah,
But
he did
not
some
here.
great comedy. He did
But
some great
not
comedy.
here.
No, but the weird thing is that he has been able to mix comedy and action well before,
Yeah.
because in the 70s he did a bunch of action type films. In fact, for the Salkinds, he did the Three Musketeers movies.
Okay.
And those mixed some comedy in with the action and everything like that.
Yeah.
And they did a pretty good job at that. And then he actually has proven that he can do serious stuff as well. Robin and Marion is a fantastic movie. And here's a controversial opinion for you. After years and years and years and years of waiting for Richard Donner's cut of Superman 2, I watched him like, hey, that's good. I think I still prefer Richard Lester's cut. I prefer the original theatrical cut of Superman 2 with the whole thing in Paris. I like that better. I like that they don't use the same end, pull out the same ending twice. I like that, So here, no, Richard Lester's good, but it's just such a misfire here,
Yeah.
and there's so many decisions where you're just like, who cares? Like when we went to see this movie, like, I don't care about this slapstick bit. I mean, I loved going to these movies and seeing these big credits in space coming at you, and now I'm watching some thing about some horrible like throwback stereotype of like a sex kitten from the 50s causing traffic accidents and such like that, and then I'm like and then I'm supposed to care about Clark Kent going to his high school reunion and meeting the kid of his former high school. Who care? Who thought this audience would care about that in a Superman movie? I mean, you put that in a movie if you want. You don't put it in Superman 3. No one cares. No one cares. I'm watching it as an adult where I should be able to relate to this because I'm now far beyond 15 years from my high school reunion. And I still don't care. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what got me with this opening is just like, how is this a setup for Superman? Outside of him rescuing the guy drowning in his car, which actually is kind of bleak. You're watching this guy drown, like, holy shit. The way that's portrayed.
But it's also you got the feeling that was that supposed to be scary or funny because it falls somewhere in between.
It's trapped in amongst all this weird comedy. A lot of it is very far-fetched.
Mhm.
You know, it's just there to be slapsticky, like you kind of noted. So there was a lot. I'm like, I want to be enjoying this more than I am, but I'm having to believe that a seeing eye dog will bark at another dog and run off.
Yep, exactly. Oh, and I will say this.
And
I
I
do.
understand that this is meant to be farcical, but at this point, but again, this is Superman 3. I don't want it to be that farcical.
To be fair, I like the gag about him changing in what turns out to be a photo booth. I like
That was cool.
That's
That
a
I
cute
liked.
gag. That's a cute gag.
And then him
Okay.
tearing off the bottom picture and giving it to the kid.
Yep. Who apparently was the person who played Baby Kal-El in the original
Yes.
Superman.
Yes.
No,
I saw that too. Yes.
that skit did work with him in the photo booth, because we've
Yes.
had a skit like that before where he went, I think it was it in 2 or whatever, or 3, where he went to try to go to a modern phone booth and there was nowhere he could actually change. You know, he went to go to the phone booth and it wasn't one of those open phone booths. So he could really
okay.
change.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I think that was in 1 or 2, but you know, so instead he went through a revolving door. But yes,
Okay.
you get that shtick. But Glenn, how'd you feel about this? So this opening just really throw you off, and the drowning scene. I mean, we have this kind of serious scene amongst all this comical stuff. What'd you think of this opening for a Superman film?
Yeah, it's darker than it needed to be. And then, yeah, this movie, it's the make up your mind what you want to do. Do you want to do a funny movie or not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's obvious you can tell that Lester, Lester, the Superman molester, does more comedy than he does other stuff. I'm not. And I mean, you said something before. I think it was you who said, it's like you liked the robot fight when you first saw it.
Yeah.
Or was that you? Yeah. And it's like I did mostly too. And then it's like when I went back later and rewatched it, I'm like, man, that's just a whole load of mess. And that's how I feel about a lot of this movie. It's just a mess.
Well, and then you take the cast, which you've built up over 2 films. These characters, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen. You've got Perry White in here. You've built up these characters around Clark Kent, who's been interacting with them, and you totally 86 them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get like 3 minutes of screen time, and the people that you've hung with, and yes, I know, sequels should change things, but not with the setup that you did in the first 2 films. And here we see these characters briefly, and that's it. We don't even get, Lex Luthor back. We get this, Robert Vaughn, this Ross Webster character who, I'm trying to figure out, as far as villains go, he's pretty lame.
He's really lame. I like, as far as Robert Vaughn villains go, I liked him a lot better in Joe's Apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Basketball.
Yeah,
Much better in
basketball, much better. Chud too.
I have a great fondness for Robert Vaughn, but
I do too. But he can do. I'm bringing up. Yeah, we're
the
bringing
socks. Okay, the one thing I particularly, he's talking about socks. He was born rich. He goes, I wear a pair of socks once and then they go away. He goes, and it just Richard Pryor going, so what happens to them? He goes, oh, they get donated to a charitable cause. Maybe they turn into pen wipers. He goes, do they get turned into socks? He goes, I never thought of that. That sequence was one of my favorite parts, because that's the only time he shows really any personality apart from being greedy.
That's true. And
as an 80s villain, greed is obvious. But
yeah,
beyond that, there's nothing else.
And we're bringing up all this schlock, but Robert Vaughn is cool. He's been in a lot of crap, but Robert Vaughn is cool. He has played amazing heroes and amazing villains.
True.
So to see him just play as, as they might say on Mystery Science Theater, Bob Evil, basically, is really disappointing,
Yeah. Well,
Napoleon Solo has done better.
Yeah.
It felt like they were trying not to do a Lex Luthor with this guy.
No, exactly. Yeah,
but not exactly, because he's not in full world domination. He just wants to control the money things, like Colombia. And you're right. The scenes where you have Richard Pryor and him are great, and there's some long scenes in here with it. Folks, it's a Superman film, and we get what, 20 minutes of a 2-hour film with Superman, maybe a little more.
I'd say a little more, but only because of that computer fight at the end.
But because of the computer fight.
I'd say that leading up to that, we don't really have much Superman.
Okay. Yeah, up until the third act. Third act is almost all Superman. You're like, hey, we've got our Superman film now. And just like the chemical spill scene, I'm like, holy crap, that's a Superman scene.
I really like that sequence.
And now we're in Smallville again. What the hell?
Yeah, the chemical scene's good. And it keeps on diverting. It's like he was finally allowed to do a Superman movie, and he didn't want to do a Superman movie. None of them wanted to do a Superman movie, except maybe Christopher Reeve, who just looks like he would really. He always looks impatient, like he's going. Okay, we're gonna eventually be a Superman movie, right? That's why I will always say that Superman 4 is a bad movie. This is why I will always say that Superman 3 is the worst of the series, though, is because Superman 4, if you look at the storyline of that, the storyline of Superman 4 is the most purely Superman-like of the entire series. It has a message. It has a intergalactic villain. It feels like a Superman comic, although just done very badly. This one doesn't even seem like it wants to be a Superman movie, and it seems to be like just dumbfounded that we don't care as an audience.
Yeah,
reportedly they almost lost Christopher Reeve for this one too.
Well, he doesn't seem into this at all, Glenn. What do you think with Christopher Reeve in this? I mean, outside of the other two films, he really feels. I know it sounds odd, but we've watched enough films, all of us. Doesn't he seem uncomfortable in this film?
Christopher Reeve is in this?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. He seems like he wants to be somewhere else. like he needs to be somewhere else all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because he's worked so hard in that role for the first two films to make him a really good guy. And as I warned you folks, we're going to kind of jump around in this film, but he gets introduced to this taint because, the computer guy in me, I've been doing computer tech support for 20 years, little backstory. Okay. And I let things go that involve computers in films, but this one, oh my God. Okay. This Richard Pryor's computer geek guy moves the satellite to scan where Superman came from, to scan for kryptonite particles, because this satellite is powerful enough to go where Krypton is and find pieces. Then, not only does it analyze the pieces, it breaks it down to its elements. And
almost.
What makes kryptonite special is 0.59% of an unknown substance. Otherwise, the rest of it, you can make it with your household minerals. I'm like, what the hell? So
is there a YouTube tutorial to tell you how to make kryptonite?
he substitutes the unknown tar from cigarettes, as if this isn't a message, with the unknown substance.
It's all in the anarchist cookbook, you know?
Yeah. So. And then he pulls his worst Patton impression at the birthday celebration. Superman goes, because he shows up at little Ricky's birthday for Lana Lang, because Superman and Clark Kent want to bust some serious homegirl game. And he gives them this, and suddenly Superman becomes Creeper Superman from Superman Returns.
Still not that bad.
Still not that bad, no. But he starts gaming on Lana Lang. He gets ill, and he's separate. I don't know.
Okay, that was supposed to be a mental battle of the wills, supposedly.
I got that.
Based, and apparently that's made more obvious in the comic adaptation. Mm-hmm. It is done so. It is introduced so poorly in the movie that if you don't know that, I'm not sure how you would assume that. Because yes, it looks like he splits into two and just fights himself. To the point where at one point the movie was called Superman versus Superman. Not trying to trigger you, sir.
Where I was going with this, sorry, I diverged because the satellite thing got me.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. We started with the satellite.
The computers in general. My brain, I just look, it doesn't work like that. Especially in the 80s. It doesn't work like that.
This is where the CSI computers come from. Now. It's all the same computer.
Dude, CSI computers are going, it doesn't work like that.
Well, that's how you can scan and flip and whatever, enhance a picture from half a mile away on a CCTV and be able to clearly see somebody's face. It's the same technology. Just with weather satellites.
Weather satellites, which apparently can change the weather, not just monitor it, which Superman was able to do, but we don't get a sequence. We don't get a full sequence of Superman saving Columbia from the bad weather that Richard Pryor's computer geek was able to unleash on him. No, we get it in flashback bits.
No, he's telling a story.
Yeah, he's telling.
That's not even a flashback. That's his impression of what he heard.
Yeah, it's like, so we don't get that Superman. The only real first Superman chunk we get is the chemical fire scene,
which is one of my favorite. Which is one of the better parts of the film.
Which is one of the better parts because it feels like a Superman. That part felt like it was from the first two movies. You're like, holy crap. He freezes part of the lake and he throws it over the fire and saves it from the acid. And you got that great scientist, a great scene actually, where Superman comes in and tells the scientist, we got to go. And he's like, no. And then he explains what the danger is. Scott, what'd you think of at least this? You mentioned it before, but didn't this part here felt like, oh my God, we may be getting back to what 1 and 2 were when you saw this scene?
Yeah, I was like, I remember thinking like, wow, it kind of took them a while to get to the first big action sequence, but this is a good solid action sequence. I still like that image that they used to run on Lights, Camera, Action constantly of Superman running through the flames and such like that. And of course, being a pre-CG Hollywood, these were flames Superman was running through. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was a good sequence, even if even if it seems like a little hokey of a resolution and such. No, it was always a good sequence. I always liked it. I thought this was, I'm like, this is a good part to the movie. I don't really have too many complaints about this sequence. And the scientist acts like a real scientist. He explains the danger and says, no, I can't leave this unattended. Now, what this guy was planning on doing with this chemical, since he can't touch it, he can't do anything with it, all he can do is say, yep, there it goes.
I was wondering. Yeah, he does. He never says he has like a fail safe to throw it underground or anything like that.
Right? Yeah, they never say anything. But it's like, But I'm a scientist. I have responsibility.
I like that he has responsibility. I like the fact that Superman was allowing the firemen to do their job and only interacted at that point because he had, there was nothing else he had to.
Yeah.
So he's still.
It kind of contrasts to later on when he just barely misses the tanker trunk falling.
If you'd have been here a minute sooner.
Yeah.
Because he spent that minute going, "Hey, Lana, how you doing?"
But I mean, the cop didn't know that. And
that would have been so much worse if Travolta would have been playing him.
The cop didn't know though, and so he would have, and so basically, really, the cop has the moxie to just try to guilt trip fucking Superman.
Hey, Superman, get a new watch. How about that?
If all you got here a minute sooner, you ain't so tough.
Because Superman can save every accident that happens across the country.
You're in Smallville. Who gives a shit?
Right. We know we called. Yeah, we left a message for you.
We left a message. Oh my God.
So yeah, we're getting the tainted. This is what happens when you smoke, ladies and gentlemen. It causes you to game on your high school sweetheart and be late to save people from a truck accident. That's what happens with tar in cigarettes. It causes this.
It darkens your lungs. I mean, your costume.
Both, yeah. There's a lot of message there, but
Oh yeah, no, it's not subtle. It's a PSA.
No,
Oh yeah.
I don't know about that.
If you stop smoking right now, your clothes are like 20% brighter.
It's true. It's true. I found that out myself years ago. Not really. I don't know.
My clothes stopped smelling so bad when I stopped. I know that, and so did I. But the
Oh, okay. Glenn, what'd you feel about the way they portrayed the computers first in this?
Oh man. Well,
I mean,
the 80s in general, looking back at what computers were in the 80s, it's like, oh my God. I feel almost ashamed to have been alive in the 80s when it comes to computers in movies. Because they're either these things that are just, they're so portrayed so poorly.
yeah.
And in so many cases, they're just these evil things. They can only be used to create bad things. They're not used for anything good ever.
It's just a magic wand. The computer's just a magic wand in this.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the terminal that he had to like start this computer terminal up like it was a nuclear launch with two keys at the same time. My brain, by that point, I'm just like, that
felt totally out of a text adventure. You know, like you're typing away, going, "Oh, turn on computer." You cannot turn on computer because you cannot reach both keys. Oh crap! What will I do? Drag drunk guy into room. All right, tie string around hand. Put key in other hand.
Yeah.
Put both keys in at same time. Computer is turned on.
So this computer in Smallville, which is what brought Richard Pryor's character to it, and eventually crossing paths with Kent. This computer in Smallville apparently can access, thanks to the joys of the one mega kilobit modem,
the early internet.
The early,
they don't know what to call it, but it's the internet.
It's got to be the internet, because his computer, while he's operating drunk, can change a light signals. It can, control ATMs.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting there going, "This is the 80s. No.
No. He is hacking into a military server, presumably. So it is the internet. Not that they would know to call it that, but all that other stuff is just like, really. Yeah, it was just bad jokes.
Not only hacking into the traffic signal, but making the traffic signal people fight each other, which was a funny gag, but it just doesn't. Again, it doesn't belong here.
It doesn't fly here. No,
no, that was another bad pun, wasn't it?
In a different movie, in a totally different movie, that would probably be one of the best things ever. And this one is just like, oh, really?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
Yeah.
Scenes like that make this feel like it's a super world. Instead of a mad. Never mind. Anyway, but that computer. And then, the whole Superman tar thing, which, folks, I'm not kidding. Superman gets drunk. Superman gets laid with not Lois Lane. Superman's an asshole.
Pretty much.
And
I'd forgotten that meme had a reality to it for a while. I was like, that's Photoshop. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, that's from Superman 3. Oh, crap.
See, and Paul unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, and I could hear Paul now not liking this part because he likes his superheroes, if you've caught any of the other episodes, to be good guys, to be upstanding guys. And even for me, I like my dark superheroes, except kind of for Superman. He's not my favorite superhero, but it's the same similar issue I had with Captain America's Civil War, with him and Tony supposedly not liking each other. Like, this is freaking Captain America. He gets along with everybody. But, it's Superman. It's like you've built him up to be a really good guy, and we get a rather long period where he's just an asshole. Scott, what about this isn't this kind of the wrong direction? Maybe, I know they're trying to do something different, but isn't this not quite the direction you want to take with Superman?
I like that they were going to go with Superman turning evil, and there's certain things to say. Okay, he's selfish, he's petty, he's cruel, but basically all I could think of was like, if this was today, this guy would be wearing a MAGA hat and just be like, be like on the internet always, just like in the comment section, he'd be comment section man.
Superman, the internet troll, not all men.
Yeah.
Not all Superman.
Yeah, it's like he'd be like poking little nerds, and they're like, "Oh, what's the matter, Snowflake? Need a space face?" He'd be one of those guys. But but like, there's certain things, like when he like blows out the torch and does stuff like that. That
was kind of funny, actually.
It's a jerk thing. It's just showing him being a jerk. Now, if they were to actually show him. And so he doesn't really turn evil. He just turns petty and selfish and cruel. If they were to actually show him become evil, that would have been something special. Not that I have any love for the Injustice comic book, which I think is dumb, but but I like that idea, and as much as I hate that Ricky was the catalyst for it, because you know what? Fuck Ricky.
Wow.
I hate Ricky. I hate Ricky. I hate Ricky. Let the Thresher take him. I didn't care.
Wow.
Shorten this damn movie up and like, whoo-hoo. And just like have Clark be like, wow, well, Lois, I guess I should just stick to Metropolis from now on. That'll be the end of the movie. But anyway, but I love the junkyard scene. I love when they fight these up, and I love it because it is the duality of it. And you guys are right. It's not as clear as it is in the book, as it is in the comic adaptation, that it is a psychological thing. In fact, I didn't even really get that, but it is a brutal fight, and you really start to get it. And it's basically, he's getting pushed around like, oh my god.
Oh, we lost you, Scott.
Did we lose Scott?
Whoop! I hit the mute. Sorry,
Oh, phew.
This thing still has a little mute button on the side here. So whenever it hits the desk there, anyway.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah, I know. I'm getting animated here. I love the. It's not as well explained as it is in the comic book, as I was saying, but it is got a psychological duality. It is a brutal fight, and you think that, of course, Clark Kent is going to get his ass kicked, but then all of a sudden he starts getting pushed, and then he just says, "I can give as good as I get," and he starts really putting up a fight, and he wins the battle. He's not as flashy about it. He isn't as cruel. He isn't as vicious, but he gives as good as it gets, and he just chokes the life. Is like, no, this is important, and it fades into him, and he opens that shirt. I'm like, yes, this is great. This is great. It's like that moment when you really wait for Superman to become Superman, and this is the moment. It's just like in Man of Steel. There's this one great moment after watching the guy mope around and be like, oh, do I have to say for 2 hours. There's a wonderful moment where Jor-El tells his son, he shows him the planet Earth, and he says, look at them. You can save them, Kal-El. You can save all of them. And with like the singleness of purpose, Superman goes off, and I'm like, yes, that is a Superman movie, because I do love Superman. I think Superman stands for something. I think Superman is more than just a very strong character. I think it is his ideals that makes him so important. How he does see the world as this chaos, and how he is able to make it work. If you ever watch All-Star Superman, it's great. Or read the comics, even better. Yeah, the comics are even better, but if you don't have the time, spend 90 minutes and watch the movie. It's still good. And I like that it champions this, and there's so much of that doesn't do this. Thankfully, this junkyard scene is the one really great sequence in the movie, and the whole he turns evil part. Thankfully, that entire part was an episode of Supergirl. I don't know if anybody seen that. I mean, I watched that show. I love that show. And they did it complete with the bar scene.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And they did it. I'm like, they just took, okay, this part of Superman 3 was good. So what we're going to do is we're going to expand that and do a homage to it. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't have to watch Superman 3 again.
We turned it into a 40-minute special as opposed to a slightly over 2-hour film.
Yeah, it was really well done. So I'm happy that they did that, because that sequence is great, and it's great because not because it's two people fighting, it's great because of the ideals.
Mm-hmm.
It's great because it's the one part of the movie that champions Superman's ideals, and I like that.
What about you, Glenn, with the taking Superman evil? Do you think that was an interesting twist and how that resolved in the junkyard scene, or do you think you like to keep Superman clean and pure all the time?
I'm not one who's all, has Superman as be pure and clean all the time. I think the junkyard scene was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you look at, I think it's having someone who's just absolutely always perfectly good. It just, at a point, it becomes, the suspension of disbelief, and then there's just the come on now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it works well having a bit of that. But the problem is you've got that shoehorned in here with the whole robot thing and the computer thing and all this other stuff. This could have been a whole story in and of itself,
right?
As opposed to let's just have this little sidetrack here in the movie,
mm-hmm.
and then and then he gets better and then goes and fights computer thing and then forgets he can breathe without air.
Doc, would you agree this kind of feels shoehorned in, and do you think Superman they need to keep Superman good guy all the time?
I enjoyed the, I don't know if the corrupted Superman, maybe not the evil Superman, because as we know, he gets petty. He acts like a jerk. He goes and drinks Johnny Walker.
Sorry.
At least, yeah. And then that wasn't me. I don't remember that. That's the only problem with 80s Superman. He has issues with
memory. Yeah,
him and Lois too. That's awkward now. But anyhow, so he's trying to the way he says it in this one, he's trying to explain. He doesn't state it well, but it's clearly no, the guy you were talking to, that wasn't me when I was me, but that's me. But yeah. But that opens up a whole nother kettle of fish because of the way he treats her. But anyway, where was I? Yes. I like the idea of there's something wrong with Superman,
mm-hmm.
and that it doesn't turn into him, tripping old ladies or blowing up bridges or anything like that. He's straightening the Leaning Tower of Pisa, blowing out the Olympic torch, just kind of being a dink. And then the charming words of a young boy can kind of try and wrest Clark back, his goodness back from him. He's not that dark.
Right.
And as much as, Christopher Reeve had enough charm, I think, even if he didn't manage to pull this off to his best capabilities, where it still comes across very well because his Superman is so bright.
Mm-hmm.
That even that's why we're calling this evil Superman. He's not evil, but compared to normal Superman, it's so evil. and my buddy Kurt Wood has often referred to these movies as Silver Age comics. And that kind of helps tell that story at that point. That's in my brain as I watched it again tonight to go, this is not being told even as an 80s comic book style. This is being told like a 60s comic book. And in that regard, a small boy going, Superman, I know you'll be okay. That's totally going to fix Superman because that's what would do.
Right.
So it works in that mindset that this was people's mentality of what a comic book was like at that point, kind of locks into that to some degree. So yes, do I think it could have been made a little more clear, the junkyard fight? Totally. but it's Chris Reeve, and I think he was still very good in this.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve is fantastic in this part because, let's face it, there were Supermans on the screen way back to the 40s with Serial, Kirk Allen.
Kirk Allen. Nothing wrong with Kirk Allen. Nothing wrong with George Reeves.
Nothing wrong with any of them, but who do we think of when we think of Superman? We think of Christopher Reeve. All these years later, even though we've had other people play him since and before, who do we think of when we think of, in fact, the most iconic superhero? We think of Christopher Reeve as Superman. He was so perfect. And it's not that he's a one-note actor. I think he got pigeonholed as that. Between Superman 2 and Superman 3, he did Somewhere in Time and Death Trap.
Yeah.
And he continued to do interesting work throughout the 80s, things like Street Smart. But he was so pitch perfect here. He knew this part. And that's why when everybody's like, "Ooh, I don't know who did a superhero best. What do you think, Ryan Reynolds or Michael Keaton?" Like, no, Christopher Reeve still. I don't care what you think of the movies. That is the best portrayal to this date. It is iconic. It's like when we talk about the Beatles and people talk about what's your favorite band, and people talk rattle off all these bands. Like, well, what do you think of the Beatles? Like, oh, well, Beatles. Yeah, that's kind of in a category by themselves. That's how Christopher Reeve's Superman is. He's that good, and that's why it's kind of sad to see him saddled with a material that doesn't do the hero justice.
Yeah, and I think that's what bugged me with that portrayal. I think had it been handled better, and I totally agree with, I believe Glenn said it, is like this could have been something you could have explored by itself, Superman duality and, you know, prick Superman versus, and you could have also explored, you know, the sheeple of the world. Oh my God, who 1 minute loves Superman, he does a couple dick moves. Oh, he's not super anymore. And then you look at the headline, he does a couple of things good again. Oh, Superman's good again. Yay.
Yep.
I'm just like, come on, people.
Smallville or Springfield, you make the call.
You know, well, even Metropolis, I mean, the headlines on the paper are just like every other headline. It was like, first Superman's not super anymore. And then all of a sudden, oh no, wait, he is again. Yay. It's like, you people are sheep. Oh my God. But
but again, Silver Age.
But a Silver Age. Yeah. And also you mentioned a good point about this. I'm not sure who started it, but I want to talk about the female characters in this film. Our Lois Lane does
not count because
she's
not
here because she's got like 2 minutes of screen time and she's Lois Lane. And you're like, oh yes, Lois Lane. No, wait, where are you going? No.
Apparently ticked off the wrong person at the wrong time.
Gotta see you in
the film.
You know, more of you, because we love your stronger character, and in place of her, we get 3 characters who still put together don't equal a Lois Lane. Glenn, what'd you think of the handling of the female characters in here? Lana Lang, Vera, and Lorelei.
Yeah. I mean, kudos to Vera, you know, and the fact that she can have metal welded to her face and then come out just fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, to say they get short shrift is underselling. I mean, just Lorelei. I mean, she's just there to look pretty.
Well, they kind of play with the idea that she's smarter than she's acting.
Totally.
But
yeah,
you know, which surprised me with that, you know, with the first character, you know, but at the same time, it's not really brought into focus, and it's kind of offhanded, like, you know, like it's a side thought, and it's never really made clear with her character to like the very end. But yeah, and what about Lana Lang, Glenn?
Why is she in this?
I have no idea. Doc, what do you think?
It's like they had some quota. It's like, oh, we haven't had Lana Lang around. We need to have her in the movie.
Yeah, and it'd be great. She'd be a single mom in '83. Yeah, 1980. Excuse me.
15-year anniversary in 1965.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You're right.
Technically, the thing doesn't match up. Yeah,
You're right. That didn't match in my head when I was looking at the release date too, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's the 15th anniversary, but this is 83. Wait, huh? It doesn't end on an even note. But I know Scott's got ideas on the three ladies, but I want to get Doc's first real quick. Doc, how about you and the handling of these ladies, even for a comic book film in the 80s? What'd you think?
I'm admittedly a little biased for Pamela Stevenson because I've seen her be very funny in other things.
Mm-hmm.
She's, it doesn't hurt that she's very pleasant looking. She was married to Billy Connolly for years.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But, and as we pointed out, there is the attempt. Clearly the character is playing a role when she's playing the sex kitten because she's reading Immanuel Kant. She knows how the computer works near the end. Unfortunately, none of it means anything because she doesn't do anything with it. And the other unfortunate side to that character to me is that there is this feeling in the computer sequence that it's Robert Vaughn and his sister on one side, and then Lorelei and Richard Pryor on the other, or Gus, sorry.
Yeah.
And Superman apparently does not see it the same way. Because he leaves, the only person he drags out of there is Gus. He leaves everybody else for the cops. And the resolution of that is so whatever to me, but still, that's, hi, I'm going to drag the co-star of the film out of this and nobody else. So as much as I liked the fact that there was this vein that she was clearly doing this character for a purpose, we don't know what her purpose was. And it doesn't mean anything to the story. So from that perspective, it's kind of a meaningless reference. Lana's there in part because Margot Kidder did something to tick off the Salkins, apparently.
Bingo! Sorry.
So, because they reportedly wanted to drag more DC characters into it, they went back to Lana. Because that was a character that they could deal with. I don't know. The Vera character is just there, I think, to look kind of tough. She's really nothing else there for her apart from just being Robert, being a foil occasionally for Lorelei. But it's not really. They show one scene where they kind of conflict, and then there's really no interaction after that. So it's kind of a meaningless character to me. No offense to her.
No offense to any of the actresses, but the way they're written. Scotty D, you opened up the show with mentioning it. Now's your time, sir. Sexist. What'd you think of how the handling of these three ladies in this film?
Extremely sexist, and it actually does start from something off screen, as Doc was just saying. The Salkins always have tried to say, oh no, the reason why Margot Kidder was only given a short part in the movie was because Lois Lane's character was done after part 2. In other words, she was only defining her as she had related to Superman, which is apparently they didn't get why that sounds bad. No, that's bullshit. That would be as petty as if someone were to bring in Jimmy Olsen into a movie and then shoot him in the head 60 seconds later. No one's going to be that petty and crass. Come on. So, that one was meant for Mark.
I know.
Had to do one.
I know.
Okay, but no. What Margot Kidder did was that she was actually made it known her displeasure that the Salkinds fired Richard Donner midway through Superman 2. She made it known that she's just like, I don't think that's right. I think the person, he should have been allowed to finish the movies and do this. And they didn't like that they were being questioned, so as punishment, they limited her to less than 5 minutes of screen time, and then tried to go with the runner-up, Lana Lang, who was a much more genteel thing, whereas Lois Lane was a tough, brassy character well, Lana Lang was like this sweet, small town girl and everything like that. And she's had a hard life, she's had to raise her kid by herself, but she's stayed true to, traditional values and things like that. Then we go, and she's actually one of the better characters in the movie, because then we have the other one. Well, what do I think of Lorelai? Clearly it is made true that Lorelai is actually incredibly intelligent. She might be the most intelligent person of the bunch. Well, gosh, isn't she a great character? No, because she uses it to play dumb. She uses it to play dumb, and thus reinforcing the stereotype, as if to say, yes, she's incredibly intelligent enough to know that she would never be able to succeed on her own in this world without playing it very stupid. Then there's the Vera character, who's just horrible. It's just, it's just never ending. Every single joke is just lascivious and like partially rapey at some points. It's just like, oh my god, it's so inappropriate. And there's been lots of inappropriate stuff. There were inappropriate jokes about Miss Tessmacher in the first two. We've come a long way since this period in our history, guys. So it's not like I'm blind to the fact that a lot of these movies were what played off as harmless fun back at the time is now kind of horrifying now. Back then, some of this was horrifying. Mm-hmm. Back then, this was bad. So, and it really, I think, tarnishes it quite a great deal.
Well, you get that point in the it's just a side comment. It's just what you're talking about, Scott, because you get the scene where Richard Pryor's character, Gus, suddenly discovers he's really good at computers. But what many people might miss is the fact you have the guy teaching them the computers. A female running a computer points out, hey, couldn't you do this? No, computers can't do that. No, computers can't do that. Then Gus Gorman does what she suggested. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, he's the genius.
And I would love to think that they were making some kind of sly commentary on that, and I don't think that they were smart enough to do that. I think it was a completely accidental thing of them proving the misogyny of the script in the actual movie. I really do. Yeah, I really wish it wasn't that way, but I do think that's what's the case.
And I feel the same way, because I was like, wow, okay, because it's not played, because if they were going to do it that way, you'd have, Gus acknowledging possibly or looking at her or chuckling, or some kind of cutaway to her, or something acknowledging that, oh yeah, no, he just did what she suggested, and wah type of thing. But you don't get that out of that scene. And that's just a little smidge. I know it's a little short scene, but it shows you how most of the portrayal of, and Doc, you mentioned it, and we're all aware, we are more aware society now, but man, the whole Lorelai thing, from she seduces Superman is kind of not himself, and so he shows up later and she is actually enamored with him because of the night they had, and he goes, oh no, I'm sorry, that night that wasn't me, that was someone else. I'm like, dude.
Well, how much of that is, how much is she enamored, or is she like, oh good, he'll protect me because,
yeah.
Bingo.
And he's like,
Yeah,
no, that was with someone, that was the me, not me. And it's like, so that completely erases your responsibility, or that means it didn't happen because you weren't in your, hey dude,
Superman.
We have long conversations about this now. Yeah,
he's totally ghosting her.
Yeah,
just a little,
just a lot. But
yeah, and that's that third act too, where we get the Atari screen, and people probably joking, go, no, Mark, no, watch it. It's an Atari video game, and it literally were graphics created by Atari. Okay,
they were created by Atari, but they were not a game.
Well, no, but I
that
mean,
was just computer graphics that they because there was
looked like a game. Excuse me, but
there was a wishes. The graphics of the day wishes they looked that good. It was either a 5200 or a 7800 Superman game that was canceled around. Yeah,
Yeah,
And
52.
people thought that was footage from the game that got canceled. That's not. They found footage of that game. That's not it. It looks much worse.
But you get this
But-
mega computer fight, and suddenly they figured out what was wrong with what was wrong with the crypt. They figured out the unknown element to make kryptonite.
The computer magically figures it out.
Never
I
mind
mean-
the fact they've been launching rockets at him. Why didn't you, if you figured out kryptonite, why didn't you put kryptonite in the missiles that you were shooting at Superman?
Because they only had a magic light of kryptonite. They didn't actually have kryptonite.
Oh, I guess magic
There-
light.
There's a magic beam of light kryptonite. Yes.
There's a great old special that they did for Superman's 50th anniversary. It's just one of those hokey little cheap TV specials, and they actually tried to do comedy about it. And they had they had interviewed people like the other newspaper that wasn't the Daily Planet in Metropolis that didn't have the Superman stories, but they had Garfield, and then they had these things about the villains who all kept on saying, "Boy, every time you see him, it was just an instinct. You knew the bullets weren't going to stop him, but you shot at him anyway, just in case one got through. Just in case, it's the same thing. Why do they always shoot at Superman? They know it's not going to stop him. Why are you shooting missiles at him? It's not going to stop him. There are two things that'll stop Superman for sure." Kryptonite and magic, and often the movies aren't smart enough to remember that Superman can't stand magic. So, so it's
Pick
one
a
thing.
card, any card, Superman.
That's it's one thing. Yeah.
Now shoot him.
Oh, look at this! They had an entire barrage of fucking missiles. Who they need to send after him? They needed to send after David Copperfield, Doug Henning, and Harry Anderson. That's it. Done.
And as much as I don't like to rag on practical effects, because most of the effects in here are pretty solid for the time, but those missile launchers, go talk to Toho.
Yeah,
because Godzilla missile launchers look much better compared to those.
Glenn, you've made better miniatures for your games, haven't you?
Yeah, and I'm not even that good at it.
What'd you think of those effects, Glenn? I mean, they got the flying better, but the rest of that.
It's 1980 something. You got to grade it on a curve.
Yeah, no, I don't, because Star Wars.
I've never heard of that film.
Star Wars, 6 years before this, did a much better job.
But they weren't making a man fly.
Empire Strikes Back in 1980.
They weren't making a man fly with a giant thing of ice in his hands.
No,
making the world's biggest cocktail.
That is mildly true. However, I will say 3 years before this was Flash Gordon.
Yes. Yeah. And
that's super hokey, but it has better effects.
It does. And what's interesting is what surprises me.
Blessed.
Yeah.
Awesome.
What surprises me with Superman 3 is you're quote unquote, this is the birth of the idea of blockbusters in the franchises, because it's only been around at this point, not even 10 years of the idea of a blockbuster, much less a franchise. But the first two films, and I like to give these numbers on every Third Time's a Charm episode. I know we're going long tonight, but as we said before, there's a lot to talk about. The first two films combined made $242 million back then. Superman altogether, according to Box Office Mojo, made $134 million. Superman 2, $108 million. So you've got a big enough franchise to where you think you might invest a little bit more in the special effects than what they did.
Nah, it's not the Salkins' move.
Huh?
That's not their move.
But I'm just saying, you would think, especially if you see Empire, you're like, come on, okay, the third Superman film, no other superhero film, we got to make this amazing. And no, the special effects are the flying's better, but
yeah. This
final battle, and then we get a build-up in the end. We were talking about how this females get short-ended. Even the mega robot, the female mega robot, gets short-ended in this film. They build her up. Oh, mechanical parts, the computers joining, parts into Vera. And how long does she last on screen, Doc?
That whole sequence was pointless because she's wrapped in wires from 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she fights him for what? How long? Maybe a minute or two.
She's got lights on other people, and then he walks up and blocks the light from Robert Vaughn, and that's about it.
Yeah,
because he went off to go get the acid.
Well, yeah.
From the chemical fire. Remember the chemical fire? They actually had a moment of continuity. I kind of liked that.
That was a Superman moment. That was an actual Superman moment to where he went back to where he remembered the acid and brought it back. It's like that little sequence there. Like, so I said, this third act kind of feels like the Superman film you were hoping the rest of the movie might be, at least.
Yeah.
To see more Superman.
A lot of wasted time up to that point, yeah.
And I honestly think I know everybody loves Richard Pryor, and he does do great stand-up, as we mentioned before. A lot of his movies aren't that great. In all honesty, it didn't need to be Richard Pryor in this role. I don't think so. Glenn, would you agree that this could have been played by someone else?
Oh yeah, this could have been played by dude we found behind dumpster out behind the studio. It did not need to be Richard Pryor. It didn't need to be anyone special.
Yeah.
Unless you were going to turn it into a Richard Pryor vehicle, which is what they did. They turned it into a Richard Pryor vehicle for kids. As almost as if they're still trying to get back at Richard Donner, saying like, ha 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 ha, well, the toy sure didn't work, but we'll show you how it's done. And they didn't.
Reportedly, he got this because he went on to the Tonight Show and talked enthusiastically about the Superman movies and said he'd like to be in one. So they went, okay, let's do that.
And he was apparently joking.
Of course he was. He was just being like, that'd be cool. And they went, we can do that. He's like, how much money are you going to pay me for that? And they went, this much. He went, okay. Is the movie any good? Don't care. Getting paid.
Getting paid.
Because another reportedly, again, he thought it was horrible.
Yeah.
He was like, that was one of the worst movies I was ever in.
Well, and he's underutilized.
Which is really saying something.
He's not underutilized. He's in this movie a lot. He's not well utilized when he's on screen. This is one of the least funny Richard Pryor movies I've ever seen.
That's what I meant.
It's all slapstick.
And he doesn't get a chance to act when the only time he's close to acting is the unemployment sequence at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Everything after that is just him being there.
Yeah,
he's just there.
He's got some funny, like, it wants to be really broad. It wants to be a really broad comedy, but his best lines are the ones that are really subtle. Like one of the best exchanges is when Robert Vaughn says, "A great man once said, I think it is a tale of the Hun. It is not enough that I succeed; all others must fail." And he says, "Sounds fair."
Yeah,
the way he just says that is perfect.
Which is not the course of comedy you expect from Richard Pryor. You don't expect him to be, double acting or doing some sort of reactive comedy. He's normally the proactive guy.
Yeah.
So it's weird to have him in that role, but yeah, he does have good lines occasionally when he does that.
Yeah, it's a waste to another waste. There's supposed so many on film that didn't work.
The whole shtick with the skiing on top of the.
Why is he doing? Well, you're like, why is he doing that? Why does he pretend like he can fly at the end of the movie? Why would he think he can fly? We know he's not an idiot. We know we know he's clumsy. We know he's absent-minded, but we know he's not an idiot. Why would he do that? It didn't make sense for the character. And another a horrible utilization of one of the absolute. I can't say it enough. You'd never know it from just watching his movies, but one of the absolute greatest comic talents that ever lived. Period.
Mm-hmm.
If you came to me and said, "Hey, Richard Pryor is one of the funniest men that ever lived. Here, watch Superman 3," I'd go,
exactly.
You need to get your medication adjusted.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant about underutilized. Not so much that he didn't have screen time, but the tools that make Richard Pryor awesome are taken away from Richard Pryor. So they want to make a Richard Pryor vehicle, and make this not a Superman movie, but yet they don't want to make it a Richard Pryor film or a it's like in the end, you get this movie where you're just like, I'm going to watch Superman 2 now. I'm going to put my VHS in.
And it could have been so much worse.
Yeah. What was the idea? You sound like you have a little insight, Doc. What was their original?
I've heard some of this. Yeah.
I believe it's on one of the commentary tracks. The original script ideas for Superman 3 involved the Salkins wanting to bring in as many DC characters as they could. So they wanted to introduce Supergirl apparently into this film. So the idea was that Brainiac would have brought Supergirl somehow to Earth, and he'd had found her forever ago. So there's this weird daddy-daughter relationship, but he's in love with her at the same time. And then they get to Earth, and then she meets Superman, and she ends up they get kind of hey, even though they're cousins, and to the point where reportedly, and because I haven't been able to document some of this completely, as a lot of this seemed more recent. Reportedly, Christopher Reeve did not sign on to Superman 3 until less than a week before shooting started.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, after they had cast Tony Danza.
I don't believe that rumor. I've heard that.
I find that hard to believe. But yeah.
I've heard that. I've heard part of that rumor. I get where they might be going towards other people and such like that. I do not believe for a second that they were about to sign Tony Danza.
Kurt Russell, John Travolta. There was one other name whose name I forget, and then they reportedly had Tony Danza.
Bullshit. I don't buy it.
My honest belief is they told Christopher Reeve, if you don't show up, we're going to have Tony Danza play it, and he showed up.
Yes.
That I can believe.
That, yeah.
Because Tony Danza in Superman 3, even if it's this... Ooh.
Hey.
I'm drinking bourbon already.
Hey, Gus, how you doing?
No offense to Tony Danza. I like Tony Danza when Tony Danza's playing a character. Tony Danza's, that's in his...
When he's fine when he's playing a guy named Tony.
Yes.
Who is pretty much just Tony Danza.
He has a range. It's very limited, and he can be very fun and sweet in that range.
Yes.
Tony Danza is Superman. I don't really have a good answer to that. I would rather, no offense to Nick Cage sounds like a much better choice. And that sounded crazy until other things happened, and now it sounds incredibly sane. I don't know why.
Well, I think we'll wrap.
I got nothing else.
I think we'll wrap it up here. We may have given more attention to this film than many people. Bits and pieces were great to this film, and as I said, with the budgets, first Superman, $134.2 million made at the box office altogether. Superman 2, $108.4 million at the box office. Glenn, how much do you think Superman 3 made?
$56 million.
Close. You are the master. $59 million.
Half.
Half.
So Eddie Murphy should have been in this movie because then it would have been half.
Thank you. Oh
I want half, Richard. Half. Well, it's better than Superman 4.
Yep.
Superman 4. How do you kill a franchise?
We're not doing fourth time's the charm next year, are we?
No, but
no offense.
But I just want to tell people where this went after 3. $15 billion at the box office. For
Still
Superman.
better than Steel.
Oh, yeah. You had to bring up Steel, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Still better than Steel. So I guess there is a silver lining somewhere.
Never did see Steel.
They canceled it during the first showing and gave everybody their money back and sent them home. Yes.
Did they really?
No. It sounds funnier that way.
That sounds better that way. It probably makes the film more interesting. So as with every third time's a charm episode, we go down the line and you can probably guess what everyone's reaction is, but we're going to do it anyway just so we can stay consistent. And so we will start with Doc tonight. And was third time a charm for Superman 3?
Okay. I'm going to say yes.
Oh.
Because it's still a Christopher Reeve Superman film.
Mm-hmm.
And while we may have, I don't want to say maligned, but made some comments about how his character was treated and how he may or may not have, he still made me, it's watching Christopher Reeve's Superman still really made me happy. So I'm going to go with yes from that perspective only.
Nice.
That when Christopher Reeve is on screen, all is well. Even when he's being, corrupted Superman, all is well. The rest of the movie is there. It's not great, but Christopher Reeve was a great Superman.
Nice. And Scotty D, third time a charm for you?
No, I agree. I agree with what Doc said. Yep, Christopher Reeve's fantastic, and I've mentioned the parts that I like. No, I still think that the rest of this movie leaves such a horrible taste in the mouth. It's just awful, awful, awful. Really was. I mean, even at 8 years old, it was a demoralizing experience. So no, and it has only gotten worse over time. So no.
Aw. Glenn, for you, rounding it out, is third time a charm for you with Superman 3?
No. And the reason is that's
You say so much by saying so little, Glenn. I love it.
That's
so
part of his
well.
skills.
It is. It's a super skill set, to be sure. And for me, third time's a charm. While I do agree with Doc, yes, when you see Christopher Reeve as a Superman, it does make you, it helps you get through this film. But overall, it was not a charm for me because the script does feel like a mess and doesn't know what it wants to be. And in the end, you have a number of good ideas for films all on their own in this movie, but they all decided to put them into here. You could have had Superman build up to fight the supercomputer and build it up by having odd things happen throughout the world electronically, start small and go big, and then you go to a big supercomputer. You could have had a whole movie about that. You could have had a whole movie of Superman, of Superman fighting himself, becoming the dick, and then not becoming the dick to save the world. And you could have had Richard Pryor in a movie where he was a computer genius, and every attempt he tried to make for the boss to make money failed, and you watch him do that in comical ways. There's many things you could do with this film. They put them all in one film, and it just doesn't quite work for me. There are glimpses, there are scenes, as we mentioned, but overall, it was not a charm for me. It is not one I revisit versus the other two, especially after, following up one, and I loved 2 when I was younger, and this one was just, yeah. And then we went on to 4, which I will agree, at least you get more Superman in Superman 4. So we'll wrap it up tonight. I want to thank my panel here for joining us on this discussion and revisiting this film that may not have agreed with them when they first watch it. And now's the part where we can get these gentlemen to let you know where they're at when they aren't here telling us about what they think of movies. So Glenn, where can they find you at?
You can find me on the internet with Facebook for Guy in a Bunker Productions, The Beamweed Bunker, Mr. Under the RPG, Demon of the RPG. You can find me on my gaming podcast, The Adventure Party, on gncast.com. Check out guyinabunker.com or just follow me on Twitter at guyinabunker.
Awesome. And Scotty D?
I haven't updated in forever. Maybe once I get settled, I will. But Movieocrity.com has all my past stuff. You can also check out my web series, Movieocrity, on YouTube. Or if you want to even see the episodes that didn't make it to the Takedown Happy site, check it out on Vimeo.com/channels/Movieocrity.
Awesome. And Doctavius, go, sir.
Okay, there are 4 more performances of Heart of the Clockwork Man as we record this. You hear this, it might be different. Thursday, tomorrow, the 16th of November, is a Pay What You Can. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday all start at 7 p.m. The Friday and Saturday shows will be $20. Sunday is a matinee on the 19th at 3 p.m. and that will finally be over, and I can stop changing clothes 3-4 times in a night. After that, very quickly, we said we were done with Shakespeare. We lied. November 24th at Westallion Brewing Company. On the 24th, we'll be doing Hamlet. On the 25th, we'll be doing Much Ado About Nothing. That's in Dallas. Those are free shows. The Cabaret Milwaukee, Heart of the Clockwork Man's at the Astor Hotel at 924 East Juneau. Westallions at 1825 South 72nd Street in West Allis, Wisconsin. Come watch local theater. Sometimes we do fun stuff. Actually, all the time. Watch me. Come watch me. It's fun.
God damn it, watch me.
Go drink good beer and watch me do Shakespeare. It's good times.
Well, thank you all. I hope you've enjoyed this listen to all our fellow friends out there of the Spoiler Room. Thank you for coming down and joining us. And now, say goodnight, gentlemen.
Good night, gentlemen.
Gentlemen.